Welcome back to my adoption journey, A Beautiful Mess. I'm Heidi Russo Allen, and we're going to continue talking about the point where I found out I got pregnant and how I moved through that. The point I found out, I had told Jeff, Colin's biological father, that I was pregnant and he wants nothing to do with me or this baby or anything. So I knew pretty much that I did not want to have an abortion. I couldn't do that again. It was awful. First time I felt like a piece of me was missing, and that really wasn't an option for me. So at that point, my options were keeping and raising this baby or adoption. So I called my dad first, and I can't even say how hard that is to call your father and tell him at 19, I don't even know if I turned 19. At that point, it might have still been 18, that you're pregnant. It was really hard. Really hard. And my dad was really great. The first thing he said was, "Heidi, I love you." And that meant a lot. And of course, I was crying. And he's always been very logical about any situation I've been in my life, and knowing me that you tell me to do something or you tell me not to do something, you can pretty much bet I'm going to do the opposite. So that's kind of the way I always was. I wanted to do things my way. I was stubborn and rebellious and somewhere in between. So he said, "Well, you have some options. What do you think you want to do?" And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but what I appreciated most is that he didn't tell me what I should do. He didn't tell me, "You need to do this," or say, "You better do this," or he didn't say any of that. He said, let's figure out how we're going to get through this and how we're going to solve, the situation that you're in. So that meant the world to me. I think he may have asked who the father was, and I told him. And then he wanted nothing to do with it. So we ended our conversation, and then I was calling my mom. And that was really hard, knowing how my mom would react. And like I said, my mom and I butted heads a lot. We didn't really get along. It didn't make her a bad person. She's a great person. I just disagreed with a lot of things and questioned so many things. Like I said, I don't think she knew really how to handle me or my questions or my rebellious nature, if you will. So I called her and told her that I was pregnant. And, I know my mom, and she's like, oh my God, and was clearly very upset. And as any mother would be, and not happy about it. It's not something you wish for your daughter who decided not to go to college, and now here she is pregnant, and that's not a dream you dream about for your daughter. So I understand it now. Then I didn't. I just needed her to love me with whatever was going on. And I know she did. It was just in times of difficulty that I don't think was, she didn't handle it well. And that's okay. But at that time, it wasn't okay for me. And so we ended up in an argument because she said, you're going to give it up for adoption. You're not going to keep it. You got your whole life ahead of you, but all those things that a mom would want for their daughter. And that was really hard. Because I didn't understand her reaction, and it made me angry. So we ended up in an argument. And we didn't talk for the next 4 or 5 months, which is hard. So, sorry. So, I decided to check out my options. And one thing that's kind of funny, not funny, but people say it happens and you think, no, it's not going to happen, is you suddenly go from having a great group of friends and support group to not having any, or very few, because they're not in the same situation you're in, and they're young, and they're out, partying and having a good time, going to college, all of that stuff, and you can't, so that was really lonely. So I had remembered Jeff telling me the story about this daughter that he was supposedly trying to get custody of, and all this stuff, and there had been a name on a card of an attorney. So I don't know if this attorney was really something for this daughter. To this day, I don't know. But I thought I would check into the adoption process. So I called this attorney, and you go through the whole, I don't know, screening or whatever, telling what you what you're looking for, what you may be looking for. I don't really know. And so this attorney was like, oh, I have this couple that you might be interested in, or that, might work or for prospective adoptive parents. So I remember meeting with this couple, and I have to say, either this attorney really didn't listen to anything I said, or obviously there were financial transactions involved on the other end. But this couple that I met, nice couple, I'm sure they're wonderful people, but sitting down with them, and I think I had to be, 6 months pregnant by then, 5, 6 months, before I finally, absorbed what was happening and could really think about what I needed to figure out or do moving forward and my options. So I met this couple, and it was in the attorney's office. And I remember this couple saying, they're looking for, a child and a boy, and they knew he was mixed race, and they were very musical and theatrical into those types of things. They would go to the theater or whatever, and they said, he'll learn to play piano, and I'm thinking, you don't know me at all, and he is not going to be playing piano. Like, maybe, but that is not where he's coming from. That is not part of, I can't imagine that would be part of what he would do in life, knowing his biological father and myself, who at that time stood over 6'2", and coming from a football family, that's what we did. I'm like, he's going to be an athlete. And I knew it was a boy at that point. So, my grandfather played football. My uncles played football. My dad played football in college. And that's just what we did. And in Wisconsin, that's what you do on Sundays. You watch the Packers play, and our families would get together and we'd watch football. And so I was thinking that this, like, no. And I just remember leaving crying. Like this, like, I just don't know. Like, if I can even find someone who would even know what I want for him, or could comprehend that, much less love him as much as I loved him. And that's a really scary and hard place to be in. I was scared. I was really scared. At that point, I had moved out of my apartment downtown because the 2 girls I was living with, obviously, I'm going to have a baby, and I may be raising him. So at some point along there, I had moved into an apartment with another girl, and I was still working at this place in Milwaukee, and not talking to my mom, and talking with my dad, here and there. He was, as supportive as he could be. And so that couple was definitely out that I just met. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to raise him. I don't know how. I can barely take care of myself. I can barely afford food and a car payment and rent and insurance. I don't even think I had insurance on my car. All that stuff. But that's what I decided. And then, I had talked with my dad off and on. I'd go to, my dad lived about an hour away in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, where Colin's adoptive family ended up being from as well in that area. But so talked with my dad again, and he said, he's like, I have this friend from college, and his wife is a social worker for Lutheran Social Services. Why don't you talk with her? And I'm like, no. It had to be in the summertime. I'm like, no. I wanted to handle it on my own. And why? Because I felt like I had embarrassed my family. I was no longer invited up to the lake we always went to where my grandparents were in the summer. Wasn't talking to my sisters. And I'm sure they were embarrassed and hurt and all those other feelings, but I wasn't talking to them. And they were doing their thing. My older sister was in college and my younger sister was still in high school. So I didn't want to embarrass my family any more than I felt I had. So I thought I would try another attorney or adoption agency. And I met, I can't even remember how many couples I met, looking for prospective adoptive parents that were similar to my family, similar values, but that, number one, obviously had a mom and a dad for Colin, which I couldn't provide. I could only provide half of that. Had the financial ability to support him well and give him all the things in life that at that time I couldn't. I didn't have that. And had an athletic or sports background, that they were Christian. I didn't care if they were Catholic or not. I was raised Catholic. I just wanted them to be Christian. I wanted him to have a belief in God, be raised that way. So I remember meeting with a couple other couples, and none of them felt right. None of them were who I thought could give Colin what I wanted him to have. So now I'm at about almost 8 months pregnant. I had about a month before I was supposed to deliver. And I can't find a family that I think and I feel would be best for Colin, would give him everything I couldn't give him. So again, I'm back to, I am going to keep this baby and raise him. And I'm scared. I'm really scared. And so, talking with my dad again, he again mentions his friend from college and his wife, Susie, who worked for Lutheran Social Services, and said, why don't you just meet her, Heidi? My dad's saying, just meet her. See what she has to say. She knows me. She knows our family. So at that point I thought, I really have nothing to lose. I haven't found an adoptive family, and I am scared to raise a baby at 19 years old, barely supporting myself. I haven't gone to college, I have no education. I have this job. Okay. So I decide to meet with her. And Susie's amazing. I have to say, Susie knew my family. She knew what kind of family I came from. She knew what I would want for my baby. And I met with her in her office, and she's just warm and kind and understood what I was going through. And she had 3 files on her desk of 3 different prospective couples. And she said, I have these couples, they have, this, and this, but I think this couple here, if you would look at their file, I think this couple is most suited for what you'd be looking for in a family. And so I read the file, and I start crying. Because they were the ones. They were what I'd been looking for. And so Susie set up a meeting with Rick and Teresa Kaepernick. And I met them. And I'm very pregnant at this point. And they were kind, very kind people. And we talked. I'm not even sure how long we talked, but I do remember what I wore. And them telling me their story of that they had already had a boy, a son, Kyle, and a daughter, Devin. And then they had 2 boys who had heart defects at birth, and both had died pretty early on after they were born. And it had to be devastating. And that they also, I don't think they told me this, but I believe Susie told me this, that they had been going through the adoption process and had were going to be, they had decided on a baby. I don't know how you say that, but a birth mom had chosen them, was going to place their child with them, and then had backed out and chosen to keep her child and raise them. So they had been through that. And so I don't know if I knew that at that moment when I met them, but it was so hard. I mean, how do you interview? How do you interview people to raise your child? How do you do that? How do you know they're going to love your child the way you love your baby that you're carrying for 9 months, taking care of yourself, eating right, not drinking, not doing any of the things that would harm him? How do you choose? What do you say? And so I remember it being difficult, and at the end of our conversation, I just burst into tears. I couldn't hold it back anymore, and I was sobbing. And Teresa came over and gave me a hug. And that meant a lot. At some level, I think she had to understand. She had lost two infants herself and just had a failed adoption. I don't know that anybody can understand as a birth mom what it's like to place your child in someone else's arms. But I think she had a pretty good idea. And so, sorry. And so we ended our meeting, and I told Susie at that point that they were the couple. They were who I could see raising Colin that would most be like my family, and how my family, meaning the same morals, values, ethics, athletics, all of those things that my family enjoyed. That's what I mean by that. Not my family in any other way, but that they were most like how he would be raised if I were to raise him. And so they were it. And so from there, then the process starts, right? I'm sure she talked with their social worker and let them know that I had chosen them. And then now we're waiting for me to give birth to Colin. All right. That's it for now. That's enough. It got deep, down and dirty today. And I never think it's going to affect me like this 34 years later, but here we are. And it still does. And hopefully one day it won't. But anyhow, stay tuned for the next video where I talk about having Colin, giving birth to Colin, and the events that happen after that. All right. Please again, subscribe and share my journey with anyone you may know who is going through the same thing or finds himself in a position of having to make the same decision. All right, take care.